Breaking the gray.
Every time I see the countdown, Sarah, I get so excited. I'm like, yes, I get to see Sarah and all of her friends. It's so exciting.
That's right. It's only you that can hear it though, Russ. So we're all kind of sitting here and you're the one who's got the full on.
I know. I know. I'm like the only one that gets to watch the rocket take off, and everyone else is like, why are you so excited? But it's great to see you. You look marvelous and colorful as usual.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just back from lovely Greece, so I've got a bit of colour.
Good. And you enjoyed it?
I loved it, yeah, for sure.
Good. And who do we have today? I'd love to get going because it looks like we have two guests today, which is actually, I'm totally outnumbered now. I have no idea how I'm going to do today. Well, I'll catch up.
Yes, exactly, Russ. You'll have to keep up with us. But we've got the lovely Dasha back on. Here she's a little bit quiet. Maybe we need to put her mic up. And we've also got a special guest, a biohacking babe. Lauren, and I'm looking at my notepad because I really don't want to murder your name, Lauren, but Sambataro.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
I'm so sorry. I've really done badly with names in the past, so I'm pleased to get that one right. But it's lovely to see you again too. I know we met recently in Austin, so it's very cool to have you on the show for the first time. And welcome back, Dasha. It's so good to see you again, of course.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. And in fact, it would be cool to... Oh, you're a bit quiet, Dasha. It'd be cool to have an update, actually, Dasha, on where you're at. Because last time we spoke to you, you were doing your retreats.
Audio is off.
We haven't got audio for Dasha. It's a shame because we did just a minute ago. Okay, then we'll switch to you, Lauren. Maybe you can just introduce yourself while we're kind of getting back on with Dasha and tell us a bit about the Biohacking Babes because, I mean, that's such a cool title.
Oh, thank you. So it is the podcast that I produce and co-host with my sister, Renee. We are both health coach practitioners. And yeah, the Biohacker Babes, we release every Monday and we cover a host of topics, anything that can empower you to be your own biohacker. We really believe that the body has innate intelligence. We have intuition. And if we can tap into that, we really can know what's best for our bodies. So we like to guide and introduce different modalities in the biohacking world that can help you get there and set the framework. But it's really about empowering other people to take charge of their own health.
And what do you think is you're working on right now? You know, what is the most cool thing that you're kind of looking at right now? Because it's always cool to hear what currently people are working at, because you can see all these trends going on in the biohacking movement. So I'm just interested to see what's your kind of hot tip.
I'm probably always going to come back to movement because that is my first love. I grew up dancing. I was on Broadway for a long time. I have found a lot of expression and healing, true healing through moving the body. And that's really the motivation behind this retreat we're running. I think that the physical body is an often overlooked vessel or asset for therapy. I think there's a lot of emphasis on talk therapy and now with psychedelic medicines, which I am an advocate for, and I am using some of that in my coaching. But I think a lot of us are ignoring the physical body. And what that does over time is it teaches the body that we're not listening. And so then the signals get dulled over time. So a movement practice, and it's different than exercise, which tends to be scheduled, prescribed. You know, you have a health goal in mind, or maybe it's just a social goal to see your friends, which is awesome too. But a movement practice is a look inward. So it could be a diagnostic to reveal some underlying imbalances or some stuck energies. And it's also a practice, like tell our body we're here, we're listening. We can be present and we can change, or we can accept, we can progress, whatever the goal is. But I just think it's a really, really untapped resource, moving the body. I know that sounds like a broad category, so we can get a little more detailed later.
I mean, it is somatic therapies, have been around for a long time, and there's all kinds of different techniques for getting into the body. Of course, everybody knows about yoga and things like that. And I did a really have you ever heard of Continuum with Emily Conrad?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I met her. She was this fascinating lady, and she was in her 80s when I first saw her. And she does this therapy, which is about kind of embracing the wave-like motion of the body. And
I love that.
I am definitely not a dancer move, this is not my background at all. And I went to some of the workshops, and they were really there was a lot of kind of laying on the floor, being a jellyfish, all of this kind of stuff, which was a bit surreal to start with. But actually, when you get into it, you do start to feel that there are actual movements that the body wants to do that are kind of not necessarily the ones that you would do in movement. They're not structured movements.
Yeah.
So do you have a special technique that you employ?
I pull in a lot of different modalities, and maybe some things would have looked similar to what you did. And I'm really excited to check out that modality. But there's some Feldenkrais, animal flow. I do a lot of Ido Portal. He's just a huge inspiration to me. I'm also a student of Paul Chek from the Chek Institute. So he does a lot of zone exercises, like a lot of things inspired by Tai Chi. So slowing down the body, marrying the breath with the body, infant development, which is really fun. So you look at a child and they're like super mobile. You can sit in a squat for hours and play in the sandbox, no problem. And then you get older and you're like, oh, that hurts. So sometimes just coming back to really primal movements, getting on the floor, crawling is so healing.
I had a trip. I was just telling the story to somebody. I went to Korea for a work event, and we had dinner, and it was at someone's house. And they have these really, really cool places in Seoul, Korea, where you can actually like eat at someone's house, and they host for you, and it's like a restaurant. But as I got there, they're like, everyone was sitting, Korean style, and I was like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to be able to sit for 2 hours like that. And of course they knew it, and they gave me one of those backed little seat cushions. They of course have strong backs and strong cores. And me, the American, sat down, and I could not handle an hour of it. So it's really important. Is there with your movement, Lauren? Is there a goal in mind, or is it goalless and it's just the idea that you're moving? Like you're not there to work a certain body part, or do you have a goal in mind when you're doing it?
I think a goal is always helpful. You want to have some kind of trajectory and intention, but I think it's all encompassing. It could be that you haven't had time to process stress, emotions, micro traumas. Maybe you're a rushing woman. A lot of people are talking about the rushing woman syndrome right now. And so often stress gets stored in the body because we don't give it time to release or to address it. It could also be weight loss. There's certain stuck energies that prevent us, and maybe it's a self-limiting belief. Maybe there's a restriction in your body that's not allowing you to get the most out of your traditional exercise. It could be energy. A lot of us, sit with poor posture or haven't sat in a squat for a long time. So there just isn't energy flow throughout the body. So I would say there are many goals, and it is important to have some kind of intention there. But this is where like movement is for everyone, where, a spin class isn't for everyone.
Yeah, we're supposed to move. Sure. We're not supposed to be
I would just say that.
Well, also you do all kinds of things to your body when you sit. Sorry, Dasha. Well, we've got Dasha back. Hooray for Dasha.
Dasha's here.
Please chip in.
For before.
No problem at all.
Technology is not my forte.
Neither is it ours.
I was just gonna say, I feel like the goal is the progress. It's the journey. It's the how can I get better? How can I make this feel better? Whatever better is. It might be, for some people, it's I want to be able to do a split. Whereas for other people, it's I just want my hip not to hurt when I get out of bed. Right? So I feel like movement, it's this natural thing that we should all be able to do, and yet we don't. Right? And I think, Lauren, you and I have talked about this in terms of the retreat. And when we've been talking to people about movement, it seemed people are like, yeah, I move. I know how to move. Right? When in truth, we don't know how to move well. Yes, we know how to sit and slouch. We know how to, get out of the chair, walk to the kitchen, make some food and come back. But do we know how to move appropriately for our age? Do we know how to move appropriately so that in 20 years' time, we don't have to have a hip replacement? We don't have to have the issues that maybe our parents or our grandparents do.
Yeah.
There was I was speaking with a few friends about this, and one of the things, since I'm the only male here, I'll give you a little, like one perspective of this is that there's this idea that when you're young and you're training for a sport, to beat you up and like to really beat up your body, because the more you beat your body up, the more you will be, you'll actually advance. And it's everything with lifting weights, or it's going for hell weeks, double days, like whatever those are called. Those are just days where they just beat the crap out of you. And that, I don't feel that's good. I have a daughter who plays college sports, and I think her training now, as she's more advanced, is really about repetitive motion, mental health, and about clearing her mind as she's playing, not thinking. I have to believe that the beating you up part is a changing philosophy when there's coaching around as well.
For sure. But I also, there is some science around, like, not so much all the repetitive movements, because that's not something that our bodies are particularly used to doing. I mean, I think, functional movement, when you're doing things that you would maybe be doing in a more natural environment, there's lots of people out there climbing trees and flipping tires and doing the squats. And because I think the body can get stuck in a movement. And I think this is maybe where it comes into the emotional stuff, because you do have certain postures in your body, like a stress posture where you're pulled in and like your psoas muscle is pulled up. That tells your body does that when it's stressed, but also when you're in that position, your body thinks it's stressed, even if it isn't, because that it's so connected, the body and the mind. It's a feedback between both. So I think releasing the parts of your body so that your body gets the message that you can relax or that you're not stressed is also an important part. So I wonder, Russ, how, if they're integrating that into
and maybe and the thing is, like, you train your mind that movement is tied to beating yourself up, and so I have to go to the gym, and I've got to go, like, my workouts have to be tough, and I think that's what makes the continuation of movement probably hard. I imagine, like, that there's a connection point in there of, like, oh, I have to work out, like, rather than, like, this is a positive thing. It sounds like, Lauren and Dasha, that you two have kind of found a way to do that.
Yeah, I think healthy competition in group exercise can be awesome. We get dopamine and oxytocin being around others, but I think there's a big lack of why and purpose in classes, or even just in personal training. I think I've had a lot of health coaching clients come to me and they say, I do this, and this 6 days a week. It's very regimented. And when I ask, why are you doing that? They're like, I don't know. Aren't you supposed to do that to be healthy? It's like, well, sure, but let's break this down. And I think movement as a general conversation is a conversation with your body. It's asking your body, what do I need in this moment? And that could be different day to day. Like, we are dynamic. We're not the same as we were yesterday, or not the same as we will be tomorrow. And so what do you need today? And it becomes a look inward so that you don't get stuck in a rut, so that you don't get stuck doing repetitive movements, or stuck burning X amount of calories because you read it in some article and someone said, this is what you got to do. So it's the addressing and acknowledging and knowing that we are changing all the time. And if we don't listen, then we just get further and further away from our intuition. And it's our intuition that really brings us back to the healing for anything, any type of feeling.
Yeah, awareness, bring it into the body. That's really cool. I was going to say, Dasha, maybe you can tell us how you're bringing it into your retreats, because I know this is where you've been putting your heart and soul recently.
Yes, big time. No, thanks for the question. So the way that we're bringing this into the retreat is, funny enough, movement and body awareness and what we're calling somatic healing, right? Healing of the body is actually included in every single one of the Women's Health Co-retreats. So every retreat has an aspect of this. In part, frankly, because I've gotten a lot more into this because the past year and a half, I've been healing my own self from an ankle injury that led me to realize that I had other injuries in my whole body that I had been holding on to. And so for me, it's become intricate to biohacking. So I see that people are biohacking and they're saying supplements and what are the foods that I'm eating and all this stuff. And we're forgetting the thing that we are carrying around every day, which is our body. And so emotions are showing up. For me, for example, I did a postural assessment with Lauren before, which I highly recommend. And if anybody's listening to this, and if you sign up for the retreat that Lauren and I are doing, then if you sign up before September 1st, you'll actually get one of these assessments for free. So sign up now. Because for me, I found that I was holding a lot of my tension, a lot of my stress, anxiety, whatever it is, right? I was holding it on my left side, which is really interesting, right? Because when we start to think about the body as a map, and this is where we get into a little bit of the woo-woo, right? Which is our emotions are mapped onto our body as well. Our old traumas are mapped onto our body. So for me, there's all of this trauma is sitting on my left side, physical trauma. So then the question becomes, is there a correlation? And they say that you have left side, right side, masculine, feminine, or feminine, masculine, excuse me. And so is there some sort of trauma that I've had to my feminine side, right? Is there something that I, as a woman, because in the past I've been doing consulting and go and running companies, and I'm in the masculine world, if you will. Is there some area of the feminine which I'm not giving enough attention to? And therefore it shows up in injuries, right? So to answer your question, Sarah, where is this included in the retreats? In every single retreat, there's an element of this. We're including resistant stretching, which is a body modality which folks like Oprah are using, and it helps to literally remove trauma out of your body. Like you pull it out with the help of a therapist. We have yoga, we have meditation, we have walking barefoot to the waterfalls. But then if you're really interested in going even extra deeper into this, then it's this retreat with Lauren. Because Lauren, I mean, you've been living and breathing this world of movement. And it's one of those things which I find interesting, because I think that movement, and I'm putting in air quotes, is like the word exercise. Everybody knows it-ish, right? Like, Russ, you know how to move. Sarah, you know how to move. We know what movement is. But then when Lauren says Feldenkrais or infant development, I have absolutely no idea what she's talking about. And that in learning from Lauren, the specific tools and those modalities, and saying, oh yeah, when you have a stressful situation, you're not getting along with a business partner, you just had you were driving and something came out quickly and you got really stressed. Well, go home and do a traumatic release exercise, right? These are tools that Lauren can teach us in the 5 days that are this retreat with her is only dedicated to movement. So I know that was a long response, but hopefully
that's super cool. I'm interested. How do you do the assessments, Lauren? Do you do them like over Zoom? Like I'm kind of trying to sit. I don't know about you, Russ, but I'm like trying to sit up now. Like,
I'm standing up, and
yeah. All of a sudden,
are you?
All of a sudden, your shoulders are down. Your hips are imbalanced.
Oh yeah, everyone always stands taller in these conversations. Or I move because I'm standing still. I'm like, don't stay still. So I have been able to do them over Zoom. That was an adjustment when the pandemic hit. Though Zoom can actually be really helpful because I can take videos, screenshots, but I do a static postural analysis. So looking at the body on a plumb line. So head stacked over your shoulders, over your hips, knees, ankles. We want that stacking. We also want symmetry, right to left, and no one is perfectly symmetrical. You would be a robot if you were. But we do want to have some sense of ease in the body. And so you can see where the deviations are and then address, is this emotional? Is this physical? Maybe you had blunt force trauma like a concussion, like Dasha, to your head. And then we can start to kind of put the pieces together and have a conversation. Like, do we need to talk about what your relationship is with women in your life? Do we need to talk about what your relationship to truth, speaking your truth is? So a lot of women, if we have like closed shoulders, like rounded shoulders in the corrective exercise world, we would say, well, I'm going to give you this exercise. We're just going to fix it. You're going to do your homework. But the conversation is, are you willing to receive love, or are you kind of closing off because you don't know how to ask for that? You haven't been taught that it's okay to ask for that. So that comes up in the static assessment, and then also a dynamic assessment, which would be squatting, lunging, push, pull, gait patterns. Walking patterns are really fascinating. You start to see tension, especially people that walk and you've seen the people that don't move their arms when they walk. You're like, how is that possible? Like, what is causing that stuckness? And it's just a conversation, no judgment. It's like, let's see if we can make this better for you. Is there something you're holding on to that could be inhibiting you from living your best, like most vibrant, most creative life? And a lot of times there's a release. Sometimes it's just, now I'm aware of it, and now I can kind of like breathe a little more deeply. There's a lot of things that come up, but static and dynamic just is so revealing.
Have you ever come across someone who's kind of in this locked up pattern and then you clear something that's purely emotional and not physical and you get a change?
Are you asking me? Yeah.
I'm asking you just
Yes.
because because it sounds like that's what you've been working on. And I'm just interested because, I mean, I've done a lot of this work myself. I'm trained in trauma release exercises and all kinds of things. And I have seen it, but for a lot of people, because they can't make the connection between the physical and the emotional, getting people to understand that you can change your physicality by changing your emotions is a big leap. Maybe not so much in the States, I have to say, because there is more of people are more open to talking about emotions. But a lot of places where I've done my training, for example, England, Germany, Italy, it's a big leap for people.
Yes. And I would say it's on the same spectrum as talk therapy. You show up to talk to your therapist and your subconscious is only going to let you go as far as it wants to go in that day. And we can kind of lean on the edge of discomfort, right? Like this hormetic stress response idea, but you're not going to just unpeel all the layers in one setting. Maybe you are, most people won't, but starting the conversation can at least build the awareness. And then the curiosity is what keeps us in that. That's the integration of it. But yes, I have had one particular case where it was a male, very closed off, and just continuing to have that conversation over time. There were physical exercises, but I think it was the talking that over time he was like, okay, I can do this. I understand. And it takes time. And it takes commitment and willingness. So that's like a big tagline of the retreat. Like, are you willing? Are you curious? Are you ready? Because not everyone's ready, and that's okay. You're ready when you're ready.
Yeah, presumably, Dasha, that's the joy of your retreat. I keep talking over you, Dasha. I'm so sorry. You go ahead.
No, you're good. You're fine. I was gonna say, I think that's the part that's interesting to me. It's the journey, right? And when your body all of a sudden starts to open itself up, and when we think that we have control over everything, right? And that's a product of the West, really. Like, I'm going to control my career. I'm going to control my body. I'm going to control everything. And I say that I want to do a squat today, and today I'm going to be able to do it, right? And for me, I noticed it last week. I'm doing a squat, and my brain is just saying, right? And so physically, I can do it. But there is something, I was telling you, Lauren, this before, there is something about the full squatting process, which, while physically I can do it, right? When I'm holding on to something or whatever, but upon the descent, my body is saying, oh no, we're in panic mode. This is scary. I'm falling, which is, for me, it was my concussion. I was falling. And so there is something where there's the physical element of movement. There's also the emotional thing that's going on in your brain, and kind of the neuroplasticity, actually, not even the emotion, but the actual the wiring in your brain that's saying, I can't do this because I'm not safe, right? And so there's so many, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of different somatic healers out there. There's a book that, if people are interested in, one, it's The Body Keeps a Score, which I think a lot of people talk about. But there's another one that I just pulled out because I just love it. It's called Wounds into Blessings. And it's an amazing book, specifically about how a therapist, so it's less about the movement, but it's more about the body holding on to this stuff, right? Where a therapist would work with a client, and it would take him 2-3 months for the body to just believe him and just trust him. So there's an element of that protectiveness of, don't touch me because I fear something. It could be an abuse, it could be a trauma, it could be just, I don't want to be touched, because if I'm touched, then I'm vulnerable. And if I'm vulnerable, then you can hurt me, right? There's so many stories that go into, I think, touch and movement and allowing that, on the retreats, there is a lot of vulnerability. And that's why we've kept the retreats so small. We've kept them only to 10 women. And I've had people ask, why don't we make them bigger? Or can we take more people? Or can men join? And ultimately the answer is, for now, no, because we want to keep them small and intimate and a safe place for people to actually have these releases if they come about.
So tell us, Dasha, when you say
No.
I'm still here. I don't know about Russ. Um, he comes and goes. Maybe this is a bit that he needs to hear.
Just like me.
Yeah. But I want to ask you about the retreats, because you say it's a small number. So, like, how many and where is it and when is it and what's the format?
Yeah, thanks. So each retreat is located in the Dominican Republic. I moved down there last year during the pandemic, and I was like, yeah, I'll be there for 2-3 months and I'm out. Nope. It just grabbed hold of me, and I fell in love with it because Cabarete, which is in the north, which is where we're located, it's kind of like Sedona in the sense that there's a lot of healers there. It's a very interesting community that's small, that's very, the people that live there are brought there because of the wind, because there's 300 days of wind, and because of the sun, and there's 300 days of sun. So you find kite surfers and people who are very much using their bodies and interested in health from the sports aspect. And so I ended up staying there and then brought a couple of my friends down and said, all right, this is a magical healing place, because I see how their shoulders, right, go back and down, and the stress melts off of them after they're there for 24 to 48 hours. And so all the retreats are there. The retreat with Lauren is going to be in October. So the idea that with this one is that we wanted you to have a moment to kind of come learn these different tools, so that you have a toolkit to help you as we get into the fall and into the winter, into the holiday season, which is full of stress, right? And so if you have these tools to let go of stress and move through stress, then yeah, stress is going to come, and that's fine, but it's not going to stick to you, right? So our retreat is in October 25th to the 30th. And it's 5 days. So you fly down, and the second you fly down, you are ours. So we'll pick you up. We have these houses that I've been lucky to find. And I have a friend of mine is just like letting us use them on the water, literally on the water, on the beach, on the ocean. So you wake up in the morning, you go for a sunrise walk. We're going to come back. We'll do different workshops. So there's each day we have workshops. We have time to play with biohacking tools, because I think that's the thing, right? Biohacking is really interesting, and there's a lot to learn, and there's so many different tools that you can use, and not all these tools are for everybody, and some of these tools are pretty expensive. And so, right, we don't spend the money to buy these tools if you don't know that they're going to work. So come on down, and you get to actually try some of these things. You're going to get to ask your questions and say, well, okay, hold up. If I'm menstruating, what is the type of movement I should be doing when I'm menstruating, right? Or the week before, or the week after, or I'm in perimenopause, or in menopause. What are the types of things that I should really be thinking about? And you can ask Lauren and myself types of questions like that. Or what's a different biohacking tool that's going to be really good for me? And I think that's a part of the retreat that we don't really talk enough about, which is a lot of times when you're getting into biohacking, it can be overwhelming. You don't know what to buy, what not to buy, what to try, what to do, right? And so Lauren and I have both been in this space for a while now. And so there's an element of, we'll have the workshops, we'll have the formalized time, but then you also get time with us over meals, over when we're doing the walks, and just pummel us with questions, right? Because that's what we do with our clients. We help guide them and show them a path that maybe they didn't understand before. Obviously, this is not a formal like coaching relationship and we're going to go full on. But if there's questions that come up of, I'm looking at these two products for X. Have you tried it? What do you think? What are your clients like? Right? Those are types of things that we can help guide you as well.
And presumably you're helping people kind of get a process or get like a priority, because I think that is one of the things with biohacking. There's so many things you can do, but like you're saying, I found it in myself. I was trying it the other day, like, okay, I need to do more push-ups. I need to get stronger. And then I read Breathe, and I was speaking to Kristin, and she was kind of saying, well, first of all, you need to do your breathing, because if you're not breathing properly and you're like kind of holding your breath and doing push-ups, you're probably locking your body structure. You're not doing it in the right way. So I think, one, having a priority list, or at least knowing where you're at, like you said, Lauren, body awareness, because if you don't have that, it's very difficult to build on something. And to giving people like hacks which are free, which are relatively inexpensive, because, knowing how to do proper squats, or knowing how to breathe through press ups, or even knowing how to do an exercise to release trauma once something's happened to you, these are things that, you don't have to buy some expensive gadget for.
And I think too, it's movement, in my opinion, movement and doing things with your body, whatever that means to you. It could be an ice bathing, could be sauna, it could be eye gazing in the sun, right? Things with your body, I'm finding more and more that they are much more effective than half the other things that we're doing, right? So stress, like I said before, it's going to come. You could try and tackle stress with adaptogens, with pills, with pharmaceuticals, you can. And that is a route, for sure, right? But what if you had a movement pattern? What if you had a tool, a breathwork pattern, a tapping mechanism, all of these things that are free, right, and quick, that you could do instantaneously, right when you're feeling that stress, so that it doesn't stick to you, so that then if you do take adaptogens later on, they're going to be more effective.
Yeah. It's really important to me that we don't give you more things that you feel like you have to do. I just think the movement can be a conversation with your body. It's the quiet time for you to tune in. So you intuitively know, okay, this is what I need. This is the body part that needs some attention. And maybe it is breath work, but you're not having your coach tell you that. You're saying, dropping in this moment, I intuitively know that that's going to serve me best right now. Rather than reaching, like Dasha said, supplements, gadgets, which all have their purpose, but that takes us outside of ourselves. And we can say, well, like, I have this to-do list because I think these are all going to help me, but that's not taking into account the body's innate intelligence. So what can your body tell you first and foremost? So it's like waking up in the morning, not checking your data quantification trackers. What does Oura Ring say that I'm going to experience today? Wake up and have a conversation with your own body first. Check in. There's so much wisdom, so much communication that can come from that. And then we check in with the biohacking stuff because it just elevates, right?
Yeah, you want to have a baseline to go on. But I think the intuition piece is a whole nother topic, because it seems to me as a species, really, it's something that we're kind of losing more and more track of the more that we have gadgets and artificial environments. And it's very difficult, it's very difficult because, I have, you were saying that you don't like squatting, Dasha. I hate doing the camel in yoga, and I've hated doing it. And I actually think that I'm going to puke when I do it. But of course I don't, but there's some emotional thing there. But I've known that for a very long time, and trying to work on what that is and tap into that. It's not an easy thing to do. And I think it's, God, if we could get this into schools, or get children to try and understand a little bit more, to trust their intuition rather than relying on devices and monitoring tech.
I think that's up to parents. I think, we live in a very black and white society, right versus wrong, and kids are naturally very creatively oriented as children, but we learn that you have to start showing up and being a yes person or being right. And there's no, let's just be messy and explore. And so we do lose that intuition, and women especially, because I think we've been bred to take care of others before we take care of ourselves. So we're just like, body, if you're telling me something, I'm not listening. Don't have time for that.
Yeah, really, it's an enormous piece of the puzzle, what you're talking about, the kind of body awareness piece.
And I think it's also the body awareness, but it's also, what is the emotion that I'm feeling? And I think there was a Harvard study that came out. I'm not going to remember all the data right now, but basically they were saying that probably 30, 40 years ago, our vocabulary about emotions was much more than it is today. So today it's, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm tired. What else?
Or,
right?
I'm good.
There's not the nuances.
How are you? I'm
right?
good.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm fine. Right? It's the 4-letter words. I'm good and I'm fine, which is like other 4-letter words, which we shouldn't be saying, right? Or we shouldn't be feeling, right? They're not a good thing. And so if we don't have that vocabulary, a robust vocabulary about what you're feeling, then what can you actually do about it? So we were talking about this actually at a previous retreat, where I showed a list of all the different emotions that we could teach or we could feel, right? And people were astounded. They're like, you're right. those are all our emotional kind of rainbow, right? And yet we don't use those words in day to day because they don't come to mind. And so if they're not top of mind, we can't then put a name on what is this, right? And if you can't put a name to it, you can't do something about it. It's just like what everybody says, if you can't measure it, you can't do something about it, right? You have to actually have a baseline. So if you had that baseline to say, yeah, I'm feeling the emotion of angst, frustration, just overall sloth, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Something that just has more of that feeling tone to it, then you could actually move through it. Like yesterday, I was just feeling, I was like, I am feeling, it felt like I needed juice. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but like I felt dry. Like I felt like achy and croaky and like arthritic almost.
You needed a body roll.
I need something. And so for me, exactly, I needed the body roll and I needed water. And so I took a shower and I was like, nope, that's still not good enough. And I went and I found a body of water that I could jump into, right? And so it's a little bit of that training of what is this? And then what do I have time to do, right? Luckily I had time that day to do both. But I think it's finding that vocabulary, learning that vocabulary, and then learning the movement that can help bridge the two together, right?
Yeah, and Dasha, you tapped into something because that was Brene Brown's most recent book was the emotion piece of it, of that we only use 4 words to describe how we feel, and 4-letter words how we describe how we feel. But knowing that there's other words allows you to understand that it's more than just, oh, well, if I'm sad, I'm depressed. If I'm depressed, I need to get on pills. And versus like, I'm just having one of those days where I'm feeling this very specific thing. And you're so right. Like being able to name it for what it is rather than just categorizing it as like, well, it's the whole bucket of sad, so I guess I'm depressed. And that really, it's so true. Are there, I mean, outside of, reading blogs and reading Brene Brown, but are there tips and tricks to like start to help you name that, to help you do those things, to kind of find better vocabulary for for yourself and how you're feeling?
I have these really fun charts that are just stacked with words. And I was taught this by my mentors, Laura and Kathy, who have a program called Be Love Now. They have a feelings and needs charts, because a lot of times you ask, what are you feeling? And, 4-letter words. But if you can kind of read through and get some inspiration, and then we put together a statement. I have a need for this. When I think about this, I feel this. Or when I think about X situation, I feel this because I have a need for this. And the example is, I feel abandoned when I think about inviting friends out for a social event. If they say no, because I have the need for community, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but getting really, really clear about what your need is and then what you feel when you're in certain situations. And I think that just colors the story and what the body is asking for. And it just starts conversation.
And there's an action you can take. Yeah, Lauren, and there's an action you can take. If you've identified it, you can say, okay, now I'm here. This is exactly what I'm dealing with, rather than taking the action on somebody else, which sometimes I find when I'm having an emotional reaction, I like to turn and say, how's it my fault? It's their fault. And versus, putting it on somebody else, it's also like, it's probably something you're dealing with. So why don't you deal with it before you throw it on somebody else because they're busy, Sorry, I couldn't go with you. I really would like to, but my friend's in town and I can't abandon her.
And just that example, if community,
it's pushing the blame off of someone else.
If community is your value, if that's something you really value and it's important to you, then you create an awareness around it. You know how to ask for it. You know how to stand in your truth and say, this is important. I'm going to ask for it. I'm going to show and tell and do all the things. I think a lot of us just want to be heard. No, I think we all just want to be heard, but we don't often know how to communicate what we need to say.
I think the other piece of it is knowing when it's something that you need to change, or whether you can actually sit with it. So an emotion, it doesn't have to be dampened down automatically. Like a lot of people are like, well, if you feel that, then don't feel that way. Don't feel anger, right? It's like, no, why not? Why am I pushing it down? Why don't I just let it come through, whatever that way? And how can we do that and not throwing it on to other people, right? If you're feeling angry, go for a walk in the woods and scream. Like, that's fine. It sounds crazy to me. And I know that when I've mentioned that to previous clients, they're like, no, but like people are going to know. I'm like, who, what, the trees, right? There's an element of let's remove it. Let's let this out. Let's let that emotion out in a positive way, right? So that it can move through our body instead of putting a Band-Aid on it and dampening it down and pushing it down, which ultimately is then just going to result in trauma later on down the line that you're going to have to deal with, which is going to be harder to deal with, right? So I think it's an element of name the emotion and then also realize, especially as a woman, what are other elements that could be affecting that emotion? So for example, for me, I'm on day 2 of my cycle. So a couple of days ago, I wasn't the nicest of people, right? And the things that, like that PMS time period, things that today don't annoy me at all, and I just let them go. A couple of days ago, they were annoying me quite a bit, right? So it was, okay, what is that emotion that I'm sitting with? And where is this falling in my calendar? Could it be that emotion is not really that big of a deal? I just need to sit with it and just let it move through me because it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Right. So it's also timing yourself with your hormones because your hormones could be impacting that emotion. It could be impacting that stress.
I think our culture just doesn't really support these feelings. That's why we have to go to the woods and scream at the trees, because if you did it in front of other people, they'd be like, what's wrong with you? So I think we have to normalize this a little bit, and that will be part of the retreat. We're not just doing trauma therapy and hoping that people break down in tears. We're going to be silly. We're going to play. We're going to do things that maybe you often feel embarrassed by doing, like body rolls. But then you look around and you see, oh, everyone's being silly and laughing, and this feels like a release. And we are all the same in so many ways. Like, how do we just normalize this like expression, like shaking in the morning, like dogs or animals do? My dog gets out of bed and the first thing he does is shake. Imagine if we all woke up and just like started fresh and like did a downward dog and started yawning to increase oxytocin. Like, how amazing would that be? It doesn't all have to be so serious. It's just normalizing that like our body is a vessel for expression. It's like kind of simple.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, we will definitely put up all the details of the treat. It sounds like something that, if you can go on it, you should go on it. For sure. That we're just going to end the show on. We just like to end it on a note. What is your then top tip? I mean, Lauren, would that be your top tip for like getting up and starting your morning right, or do you each have like something that is your go-to? Because we give people a lot of information in these podcasts, and sometimes it's good to leave people with just one thing that they can like say, okay, I can try that at home and just kind of get started on, implementing what you've been saying.
I love
really
to just ask my body what it needs first thing in the morning. So before I check my Oura ring or my BioStrap or check my phone, and before I jump into the routine that I did for the last 5 days, which might have been serving me then, like I wake up and I start fresh because maybe that routine needs to be different today. So just 1 minute of quiet, just say, what is going to serve me best in this moment? And really nothing else matters. And you just wait and listen for the answer. And that's it. And then hopefully you'll do something with that answer.
Yeah, that's the next stage, isn't it? Awareness is good. The next stage is action, for sure. What about you, Dasha?
Micro joys is my thing. We talked about it on our Instagram live the other day, but the science out there says that we need 7 positive things to offset 1 negative thing, which is insane to me, because when I open up the news, I'm bombarded with negativity. When I see something, like there's so much negativity in this world right now that I need like 50 positive things per day, And so for me, it's waking up and going to bed and throughout the day, just finding a micro joy, right? Like I love, when you make that cup of coffee and you pour it, and then you can get it, like if you're making a coffee that has that you're blending and putting things into it, and you have a little bit of froth and you pour it over and it gets right to the brim of the cup. Like for me, that's a micro joy. I'm like, yes, I just won today because it went right to the tip of the cup and it's amazing. Or yesterday I went to wash the car and for some reason I really got joyful about being in a car wash. I don't know why, but for some reason, right? So it's like finding those little micro joys. And so I think biohacking is amazing. I mean, movement is obviously a huge part, especially now. But for me, it's constantly seeking out the micro joys, seeking out the little things that can give me a little boost of happiness.
It's when
Yeah,
Dasha,
for
one thing
sure.
about that is
I was waiting for
really
Russ to say
interesting.
you're.
Well, it's so interesting because we interviewed someone a few months ago around like junk music and putting junk into your brain. And I find it interesting that, you know, one of the things that is important is listening to music, right? And so the music you choose also evokes an emotion. So why not choose music that makes you feel good? If you are surrounded by negativity, choose some upbeat music and not listen to Joy Division and the music that's going to bring you down, My Bloody Valentine, things that will just ruin your day. Because that's, again, you're just creating more trauma for yourself. So super insightful. I like to narrow it down and say, just be kind to yourself. And thank you again for the three of you for reminding me and others that we have to just be kind to ourselves.
Yes. And I was waiting for you to say, Russ, that we were the joy in your day
You
to
are,
day,
and
but
you
you
are
didn't
absolutely.
pick up on it. And I thought you
I
were going to
know,
say it.
I know. When my computer
say
shut down
instead.
mid podcast, there was a moment where I needed like 49 joys because I had to like turn on another computer.
Oh,
Super fun. It's just
Shake it
technical.
off.
It's a
Hey,
technical.
I had that in the
Like
beginning
Lauren
of the
Sob.
podcast, right? So, you know, it happens, and yet
Yeah,
we're here,
yeah.
and it's all good.
My computer will not restart now either, so it's a fine. It's just it's a Mac. It's so totally fine. Thank you both, all three of you. Thank you. I now get to replace all the negativity for the rest of the day because I've had the three of you for an hour. So
Thank
I'm so
you.
lucky.
there we go. There we go. Back on form, Russ. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care,
Chat
everybody.
soon. Bye. See
Bye.
you in the
Breaking the gray.